Sometimes the greatest turning point in a person's life doesn't come from fighting harder, explaining more, or trying to convince anyone of your worth. It comes in the quiet moment when you step back, take a breath, and realize you don't need to stay where your mind feels heavy and your spirit feels drained. Walking away is not weakness. It's not surrender. It's the highest expression of self-respect, because it's the moment you finally decide that your peace matters more than someone else's opinion, more than familiar chaos, more than the comfort of staying stuck. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the mind becomes unstoppable when it learns to withdraw into itself, to choose what deserves its attention and what does not. And in a world that constantly pulls you in every direction, where noise is endless and expectations are heavy, the courage to walk away becomes a rare kind of power, quiet, invisible, but life-changing. You feel it as soon as you choose yourself over the battle you were never meant to fight. You feel it when you remove your presence from places that don't nourish you, and suddenly the world becomes clearer, calmer, and more honest. Not because the world changed, but because you finally did. If you're listening to this, maybe something in your life has been asking you to let go. Maybe softly, maybe painfully. And maybe today is the first day you allow yourself to consider that the most powerful move you can make is the one that leads you back to yourself. Not everything deserves your energy. Protect your sanctuary, because your inner world is the only territory that truly belongs to you. You know this already. Every time you force yourself to keep engaging with someone who drains you, every time you stay in an argument that spirals nowhere, every time you allow a situation to occupy your thoughts long after it should have ended, you feel something inside you shrink. The Stoics believed that energy is a form of life itself, and what you give your attention to becomes the architect of your future emotions. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Your mind will take the shape of what you frequently hold in thought, and if your days are filled with reactions, tensions, and battles that never end, then your life slowly becomes shaped by the things you wish you had walked away from." Protecting your sanctuary doesn't mean isolating yourself or avoiding challenges. It means being deliberate with what you allow to enter the space of your mind. It means asking yourself, does this deserve a place in me? Does this align with who I'm becoming? Because there is a moment, everyone reaches it, where you realize your peace is more valuable than being understood. Your time is more valuable than proving a point, and your emotional energy is more valuable than winning a fight that offers nothing in return. And when that moment finally arrives, walking away is no longer a dramatic decision. It becomes a natural consequence of knowing your worth. So protect the silence inside you, as if it were sacred, because it is. And remember, the world only takes what you continue to offer, so offer wisely. Setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's self-respect. And the moment this truth settles into your bones, everything in your life begins to rearrange itself with quiet precision. People often talk about boundaries as if they're walls, but they are not. They are invitations. Invitations for others to meet you where dignity lives. Invitations for you to rise into a version of yourself that refuses to abandon your own needs in the name of pleasing someone else. For years, you may have accepted situations that drained you, conversations that left you exhausted, relationships that chipped away at your sense of worth, one compromise at a time. And maybe you told yourself, this is what good people do, this is kindness, this is patience. But kindness that destroys you is simply a slow form of self-erasure, and patience in the wrong direction becomes a quiet form of suffering. Walking away, in this sense, becomes a boundary in motion, a physical expression of an inner truth that can no longer be ignored. Marcus Aurelius often wrote about the importance of protecting one's inner citadel, that sacred part of you that must remain untouched by the world's chaos, unaffected by the storms of others. When you establish boundaries, you are not pushing people away. You are simply deciding who gets access to that citadel and under what conditions. You are choosing what influences your energy, your emotions, your sleep, your focus, your well-being. And choosing these things is not selfish. It is necessary if you want to live a life guided by clarity rather than guilt, intention rather than obligation. You know this already because every time you ignored your own needs to keep the peace, you felt a quiet heaviness inside you, a subtle fracture between who you are and who you were pretending to be. The Stoics believed that a person who abandons themselves for the approval of others has already given away their freedom. Boundaries are how you reclaim that freedom. But here's the part no one tells you. When you first begin to set boundaries, the world will not applaud. Some people will be confused. Others will be offended. A few may even try to guilt-trip you back into the person you used to be, the one who tolerated everything and asked for nothing. And in those moments, it is tempting to soften your stance, to explain yourself, to reassure everyone that you're still the same. But you're not. And that's the point. Growth changes your capacity for certain behaviors. It sharpens your awareness of what no longer fits. It strengthens your ability to say no without apology and yes without fear. Boundaries are proof that you're becoming someone who refuses to betray themselves just to feel liked. Walking away, then, is a boundary of the highest order. It says, I will not remain in places that subtract from me. I will not negotiate for respect. I will not shrink so someone else can feel larger. When you walk away, you are not abandoning the relationship. You are abandoning the version of yourself that tolerated the disrespect. And that decision alone is powerful enough to realign your entire life. It sends a message to your subconscious. I matter. My peace matters. My voice matters. And once your subconscious believes that, your actions begin to reflect it effortlessly. But boundaries are not only about protecting yourself from others, they are also about guiding yourself away from the patterns that have kept you stuck. Think about all the times you've said yes when your entire body whispered no. Think about the times you over-explained, overgave, overstayed. These patterns become so familiar that breaking them feels like betrayal, not of others, but of your old self. Yet every boundary you set is a small act of liberation from that past version of you. It is an announcement to your inner world that you are ready to live with more intention and less chaos. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the soul becomes dyed by the color of its thoughts. Boundaries are how you choose the colors. They are how you prevent your mind from absorbing the anxieties, expectations, and emotional storms of others. And as your boundaries strengthen, something profound begins to happen. People start treating you the way you treat yourself. Those who respect your limits will naturally remain close. Those who resist your growth will drift away. And both outcomes are gifts. You no longer waste time deciphering mixed signals or fighting for clarity in unclear relationships. Your life becomes simpler, cleaner, more aligned. You breathe easier. You sleep better. You think more clearly. The world becomes less noisy because you have finally stopped participating in the noise. Walking away in this context becomes not an ending, but a refinement. It is the trimming of dead leaves so new growth can begin. It is the clearing of emotional clutter so peace can return. It is the reclaiming of your voice after years of whispering. And when you finally decide that your boundaries are non-negotiable, you will notice something unexpected. The right people don't punish you for having limits. They respect you more because of them. The wrong people fall away, and you rise into the kind of self-respect that no one can take from you. Because in the end, boundaries are not about keeping others out. They are about keeping yourself intact. Closure comes from within, not from people who hurt you, and accepting this truth is one of the hardest but most liberating steps a person can take. We grow up believing that emotional wounds must be stitched together by the very hands that opened them, that the person who caused the pain must also be the one to make sense of it. But life, in its quiet honesty, teaches a different lesson. Some people will leave without explanation. Some relationships will end without clarity, and some chapters will close without the dignity you hoped for. And if you spend your days waiting for apologies, for explanations, for the kind of validation that only comes from someone who never knew how to offer it, you trap yourself in a cycle of emotional dependence that steals your peace one unanswered question at a time. Marcus Aurelius wrote that we suffer more from imagination than reality, and nowhere is this more true than in the stories we create while waiting for closure that will never arrive. The truth is that closure is not an external gift. It is an internal moment of awakening. It comes when you finally understand that the ending had nothing to do with your worth. It comes when you stop replaying the past like a broken film, searching for scenes that could have gone differently. It comes when you stop asking, "Why did they do this?" and start asking, "Why am I holding on to this?" Closure isn't a conversation. It's a decision. A decision to reclaim the space in your mind that has been occupied by confusion, resentment, or longing. A decision to stop negotiating your peace with circumstances that refuse to change. A decision to accept what happened, not because it was fair or justified, but because it already happened, and continuing to resist reality only prolongs the pain. But letting go of external closure is difficult because the human mind seeks meaning. We want stories to make sense. We want endings to be neat, justified, complete. And when someone leaves abruptly, or hurts us deeply, or withdraws their presence without explanation, our mind fills the silence with self-blame. Did I say something wrong? Was I not enough? Could I have fixed it? These questions loop endlessly, not because answers exist, but because the mind fears the unknown more than the truth. And the truth is often simple. Some people do not have the emotional capacity to give closure. Some do not want to. Some do not even understand why they acted as they did. Expecting them to offer wisdom they never had is like asking an empty well to give water. It cannot, and returning to it only deepens your thirst. The Stoics believed that peace begins when we stop demanding from others what they are incapable of giving. When you release the expectation that the person who hurt you must also heal you, something powerful happens. Your energy returns to you. Your focus shifts inward. You begin to see the situation not as a wound left open by someone else, but as a lesson meant to guide you. You understand that closure is not a conclusion. It is a realignment. It is the moment you stop trying to reopen a chapter that has already served its purpose. It is the quiet acceptance that not all stories end with understanding, but all endings can lead to growth. Think for a moment about a time when you desperately needed closure. Maybe you wrote long messages that were never answered. Maybe you rehearsed conversations that never happened. Maybe you waited for an apology that still hasn't come. And looking back, you realize that the heavy part wasn't the ending itself. It was the waiting. The waiting for someone else to give you permission to move on. The waiting for a sentence, a moment, a gesture that would finally allow you to breathe again. But the moment you stopped waiting, The moment you chose to step forward without the explanation you once believed you needed, that was the moment closure began. Not because of them, but because of you. And here is the deeper truth. Closure is a skill, a form of emotional maturity. It is the ability to finish a chapter without resentment, to walk away without bitterness, to allow what happened to shape you without defining you. It means no longer needing the person who hurt you to acknowledge your pain in order for you to release it. It means no longer tying your healing to someone else's growth. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If someone does wrong, the fault is theirs, not yours." Closure is accepting that wrongdoing, understanding that it reflects their character, not your value, and releasing the burden that was never meant for you. Real closure feels like coming home to yourself after being away for too long. It feels like waking up one day and realizing that the pain no longer controls your thoughts. It feels like breathing without heaviness, thinking without tension, remembering without hurting. It doesn't arrive all at once. It arrives slowly, subtly, quietly, the way dawn replaces darkness. And then one day you find that the story no longer holds you. You hold it. And that is the essence of inner closure, reclaiming your power from the past, pulling your energy out of the hands of someone who never knew how to hold it, and returning it to yourself where it always belonged. You don't move on because you received clarity. You move on because you created it. You don't heal because someone fixed the damage. You heal because you refuse to let the damage define you. And maybe the most healing truth of all is this: closure is not something you find. It is something you become. Growth begins the moment you step beyond your comfort zone, and walking away is often the first quiet step into that unfamiliar territory where your true self waits. Most people believe growth is something that happens naturally with time, but time alone changes nothing. It is the choices you make within that time that shape you. And one of the most transformative choices you will ever make is to leave a situation, a relationship, or a routine that you've outgrown. The comfort zone is warm, familiar, and predictable, but it is also limiting. It keeps you tied to versions of yourself that existed in older chapters of your life. When you stay too long, you begin to shrink, just to fit a space that no longer matches your potential. Walking away is the moment you stop shrinking. The Stoics understood this long before modern psychology gave language to it. Epictetus taught that the things we cling to most tightly are often the very things that hold us back, and that freedom begins not when we gain more, but when we release what no longer serves us. Growth cannot begin while you are still negotiating with your fears. Growth does not bloom in comfort. It blooms in the unknown. And the unknown is exactly where you step the moment you walk away. You may not realize it at first, but that step is an act of faith. Faith in your ability to rebuild. Faith in your capacity to adapt. Faith that your future can be better than your past. Think about the times you stayed longer than you should have, not because you were happy, but because you were comfortable. Maybe you stayed in a job that suffocated you because the predictable paycheck felt safer than uncertainty. Maybe you remained in a relationship that drained you because the idea of starting over felt terrifying. Maybe you tolerated patterns that dimmed your spirit simply because they were familiar. Familiarity is a powerful drug. It tricks the mind into believing that known pain is preferable to unknown possibility. But what if the unknown is the very place where your strength is waiting? What if the comfort zone is not a sanctuary, but a cage? Growth begins where convenience ends, and walking away is the symbolic moment you break the lock of that cage. When you take that step, you are not only leaving behind a situation, you are leaving behind an old identity. An identity shaped by compromise, by fear, by holding back, by waiting for change instead of becoming the change. As you step forward, the world expands, and so do you. You begin to see capabilities in yourself that were hidden beneath routine. You begin to notice opportunities that were invisible when your life was consumed by the same patterns. You begin to hear your inner voice more clearly because the distractions that once drowned it have finally been removed. Fresh air, literally and metaphorically, becomes part of your growth. Sometimes simply creating space, emotional space, mental space, physical space, is what awakens the parts of you that have been asleep for years. A long walk alone, a new environment, a morning with silence instead of noise. These simple moments can shift your entire life because they interrupt the cycles that confined you. Even Marcus Aurelius often wrote his most profound reflections while on military campaigns far from Rome, surrounded by unfamiliar landscapes that forced him inward. Growth for him came not from comfort, but from challenge. Not from routine, but from reflection born in solitude. Walking away gives you the solitude necessary for that kind of reflection. You begin to ask questions that never surface in comfort. Who am I becoming? What do I truly want? What have I tolerated for too long? These questions are uncomfortable because they expose truth. But it is in that exposure that transformation begins. And transformation is painful, not because it hurts to grow, but because it hurts to shed the parts of yourself that were built for survival, not for fulfillment. Growth demands honesty, and honesty often demands distance. Distance from the noise, from the expectations of others, from the habits that no longer hold meaning. But stepping beyond your comfort zone doesn't only require courage, it rewards it. Slowly, you begin to feel stronger. You begin to trust yourself more. You begin to take actions not from fear, but from clarity. And one of the most beautiful outcomes of growth is this: your future becomes larger than your past. You are no longer defined by what you endured, but by who you are becoming. The person who once stayed small to keep others comfortable becomes someone who expands naturally, unapologetically, confidently. The person who once feared the unknown becomes someone who recognizes it as the birthplace of every new version of themselves. Growth also teaches you something subtle but powerful. The world doesn't fall apart when you leave. Your life doesn't collapse when you choose yourself. The people who truly value you remain. The opportunities meant for you emerge. The peace you thought you lost returns. And the space created by walking away becomes fertile ground for new beginnings, relationships that respect you, environments that support you, routines that energize you, and a life that aligns with your values rather than undermines them. And perhaps the most important truth of all is this: every time you outgrow something and choose to walk away, you teach your mind a new level of self-worth. You teach it that discomfort is not danger, that unfamiliar territory is not a threat, that choosing yourself is not selfish. You teach it that you are capable of rebuilding, capable of rising, capable of becoming more than the version of you that comfort tried to freeze in time. And once your mind learns this, truly learns this, you stop fearing change. You begin to welcome it. Because the moment you step beyond your comfort zone, you step into possibility, and that is where life finally begins to open. You cannot change others, but you can change direction, and that single shift can save you years of emotional exhaustion. One of the greatest illusions we carry is the belief that with enough love, patience, explanation, or effort, we can somehow transform another person into who we need them to be. We imagine that if we just communicate a little better, if we forgive a little more, if we tolerate just one last time, something will click inside them, and they will finally treat us the way we've always wished they would. But Marcus Aurelius warned against this hope. You have power over your mind, not outside events. And people, their actions, their habits, their emotional capacity, are among the most unpredictable of those outside events. The more you try to change someone who doesn't want to change, the more you drain the very energy you need to transform your own life. It's painful to accept, because the heart always believes it can help, it can fix, it can inspire. The heart imagines potential. It sees not who someone is, but who they could be if they loved differently, listened differently, showed up differently. But the truth is that you can't build a future on potential. You can't heal someone who refuses to look at their own wounds. You can't force emotional maturity into someone who is committed to staying the same. And you can't rewrite a story that only you are trying to write. When you stay in situations where you are constantly hoping the other person will change, you trap yourself in an emotional waiting room, watching the same door, waiting for it to open, hoping this time it will be different. And while you wait, your life waits too. The Stoics understood that suffering increases when we resist reality. Trying to change someone else is a form of resistance. Resistance to who they have shown themselves to be. Resistance to their limitations. Resistance to the truth that not everyone has the same emotional tools, discipline, or self-awareness. And the more you resist, the more you suffer. You find yourself explaining the same boundaries, repeating the same conversations, negotiating your needs over and over until you no longer recognize the person you used to be. You begin to dim your own light so theirs doesn't feel too small. But dimming yourself does not help them grow. It only makes you disappear in your own life. Walking away becomes necessary not when you stop caring, but when you finally understand that your caring cannot do the work for them. It becomes necessary when you realize that staying is no longer love. It's self-abandonment. The moment you choose to walk away is the moment you choose truth over illusion. You choose your well-being over wishful thinking. You choose the direction of your own life rather than the inertia of someone else's. And in that decision, something powerful happens. Your energy returns to you. Your future begins to open again. You stop waiting for the world to change and begin changing your own steps instead. But here's the part that many people struggle with. Walking away does not mean you have given up on them. It means you've stopped giving up on yourself. When you release responsibility for someone else's growth, you free yourself from the emotional burden of fixing what was never yours to fix. You stop carrying their potential like a weight. You stop confusing endurance with loyalty. And you stop believing that love should hurt this much. Instead, you redirect your effort toward the one place where change is always possible: your own life. Imagine how much mental space opens when you stop monitoring someone else's behavior, stop decoding mixed signals, stop hoping that this time they will be consistent. Imagine how much clarity returns when you no longer revolve your decisions around someone who never meets you halfway. When you walk away, you reclaim that clarity. You reclaim the energy that was drained by emotional tug-of-war. You reclaim the parts of yourself you compromised just to maintain a connection that no longer nourished you. And suddenly, the world around you begins to realign. Not because people changed, but because your direction did. Growth often requires removing yourself from environments that limit your evolution. Some people are lessons, not lifelong companions. Some situations are stepping stones, not destinations. And some connections come into your life to show you what you will no longer tolerate. When you understand this, walking away stops feeling like loss. It starts feeling like liberation. The path ahead becomes wide again. Your identity expands beyond the old patterns. You begin to reconnect with the person you were before you started bending yourself into shapes that didn't fit. And perhaps the most profound realization is this: when you stop trying to change others, you start changing yourself in ways that ripple through your entire life. You develop stronger boundaries. You form healthier relationships. You recognize red flags sooner. You choose people who choose you back. You build a life that reflects your values instead of your wounds. The world feels different because you are different. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself, be tolerant with others, strict with yourself. This was not a call to self-criticism, but to self-leadership. You cannot force growth onto another person, but you can demand it from yourself. You can choose discipline over chaos, clarity over confusion, truth over fantasy. You can choose to walk toward a future that honors your spirit, rather than remain in a past that dims it. And maybe that is the hidden gift of walking away. It teaches you that your life becomes lighter, clearer, and more honest when you stop dragging people who were never meant to go where you're going. It teaches you that direction matters more than attachment. And it teaches you that you are allowed, truly allowed, to choose the path that leads you back to your own strength. Trust your intuition. It knows before you understand, and learning to listen to that quiet inner voice is one of the most powerful skills you will ever develop. Intuition is not magic, and it is not guesswork. It is the accumulated wisdom of your experiences, your observations, your values, your patterns, and your subconscious insights woven into a single internal signal that nudges you long before your mind can articulate why. Most people hear that signal, but very few trust it, because intuition speaks softly while fear speaks loudly. Intuition whispers, something is off, while attachment says, give it more time. Intuition says, leave now, while hope begs for one more chance. But Marcus Aurelius understood the truth. The soul has its own clarity, and when something goes against it, the mind becomes restless. That restlessness is not weakness, it is guidance. Think about how many times in your life you felt a subtle discomfort around a situation, a person, an environment. Nothing dramatic, nothing obvious, just a quiet sense that something wasn't aligned. Maybe you felt tension in your chest, or a heaviness in your breath, or a strange hesitation you couldn't explain. You tried to rationalize it. You overrode it. You told yourself you were imagining things. Then later, when things fell apart or proved to be unhealthy, you said the sentence almost everyone says, I knew it. That is intuition, the wisdom you ignore at first and recognize only in hindsight. Walking away often begins with this subtle signal, not with anger, not with a dramatic breaking point, but with the quiet realization that the version of you who chose this situation is not the version of you who wants to stay in it. Intuition becomes the bridge between who you are and who you are becoming. And the more you honor it, the more aligned your life becomes. The Stoics believed that living in harmony with your inner nature, your higher self, is the path to peace. Intuition is the compass that points toward that harmony. But trusting intuition is difficult because it rarely comes with evidence. It rarely gives you a clear explanation. It simply tells you that something isn't right. And the human mind hates uncertainty. It craves logic, justification, proof. It wants to know why before it acts. But the truth is that your intuition often knows why, long before your mind does. It reads body language you're not consciously analyzing. It picks up inconsistencies in tone, patterns in behavior, unspoken tension, subtle shifts. It connects dots that your conscious mind has not yet seen, and because intuition is pre-verbal, it communicates through sensations rather than arguments. This is why people who learn to listen to their intuition tend to walk away earlier, heal faster, and choose better. They don't wait for the evidence to confirm what their spirit already knows. They don't need dramatic events to justify leaving. They don't cling to potential or promises. They act when the energy shifts, when the tone changes, when their internal balance feels disrupted. They honor the signal before the storm. But intuition doesn't only warn you when something is wrong, it also guides you toward what is right. It draws you toward environments where you feel expansive instead of tense. It nudges you toward people who bring calm instead of confusion. It highlights opportunities that align with your values, your growth, your deeper purpose. Intuition is not only an alarm, it is a compass. And when you learn to trust it, your path becomes clearer, even when circumstances remain uncertain. Of course, intuition becomes stronger with self-awareness. If your mind is cluttered by fear, anxiety, or past trauma, it becomes harder to distinguish intuition from emotional noise. This is why solitude, silence, journaling, reflection, all of these practices sharpen your internal clarity. Marcus Aurelius often retreated into silence during military campaigns, writing his meditations not to impress others, but to understand himself. He believed that the mind becomes its own guide when distractions fall away. Intuition thrives in quiet. It weakens in chaos. Walking away becomes easier when your intuition is strong, because you no longer argue with your inner voice. You no longer debate with yourself for weeks or months, trying to justify unhealthy patterns. You no longer ignore the early signs. Instead, you accept the truth as soon as you feel it. And that truth is often simple. If something consistently drains your spirit, disrespects your values, or disrupts your peace, it is not meant to stay. Intuition knows this long before your mind does. But listening to intuition also requires courage. It requires the bravery to act without full understanding, to trust yourself even when others disagree, to step into uncertainty because your inner signal tells you it's time. Most people don't lack intuition, they lack the courage to follow it. They prefer the comfort of confusion over the discomfort of clarity. They prefer staying in familiar pain rather than walking toward unfamiliar peace. But growth demands that you trust yourself more than you trust your fears. And here's the striking truth. Intuition is almost always right, not because it predicts the future, but because it aligns you with your truth. Even if walking away is painful, even if the path is unclear, even if you feel afraid, when you follow your intuition, you never regret it. You don't regret leaving what was shrinking you. You don't regret choosing peace over chaos. You don't regret honoring the quiet voice inside you that says, "You deserve better." Over time, as you begin to trust this voice, life becomes less about forcing outcomes and more about flowing with your inner direction. You stop chasing people. You stop explaining yourself excessively. You stop waiting for signs from the outside world. You carry your compass within you, steady and unwavering. And every time you act on intuition, you reinforce your self-trust. You teach yourself that your inner wisdom is reliable, that your spirit knows where it's meant to go. And maybe that is the essence of intuition, a gentle reminder that you are not lost, a quiet signal that your path is waiting, a whisper that says, "Walk this way." And if you follow it, truly follow it, you will always walk toward the life that was meant for you. Honor your true self. Master your inner world, because everything you walk away from on the outside is really just a reflection of something you've already outgrown on the inside. This is the quiet truth most people never realize. Walking away is not just a physical act, not just a decision to leave a place or a person. It is an inner shift, a transformation in identity. You stop being the version of yourself who tolerated certain behaviors, who accepted crumbs instead of respect, who stayed silent when you should have spoken, who made yourself small to keep others comfortable, and you begin to rise into the version of yourself who knows their worth, not because someone else validates it, but because it exists as naturally as your breath. When Marcus Aurelius wrote about retreating into yourself, he wasn't talking about withdrawal or isolation. He was talking about the power of cultivating an inner world so strong, so calm, so rooted in truth, that nothing external can disturb it. To honor your true self means to recognize that your peace is sacred. It means understanding that your emotional, mental, and spiritual well-being cannot depend on the unpredictable behaviors of others. It means accepting that your responsibility is not to fix anyone else's chaos, only to preserve your own clarity. And this mastery begins internally, long before you walk away from anything. It begins when you notice the subtle ways you've betrayed yourself, agreeing when you meant no, staying when you wanted to leave, laughing when something hurt, giving chances when your spirit was already exhausted. These small betrayals accumulate quietly, until one day you look at your reflection and see a person shaped not by intention, but by compromise. Honoring your true self means reversing that erosion. It means coming home to the person you were before the world taught you to doubt your voice. When you begin this inner work, you'll notice that walking away becomes less dramatic. It becomes natural, automatic, not an act of rebellion, but an act of alignment. You are no longer fighting to detach. You simply no longer fit in spaces where your soul feels restricted. You stop chasing validation. You stop negotiating your boundaries. You stop proving your worth. Why? Because once you master your inner world, external chaos loses its power over you. You stop reacting emotionally to people who try to manipulate you. You stop absorbing negativity. You stop taking things personally. You understand deeply that other people's behavior is a reflection of their inner world, not a measure of your value. And something beautiful happens when this mindset settles. Your relationships change. The people who once drained you fall away naturally, because you no longer feed the dynamic with your energy. Those who respect your boundaries grow closer. You begin attracting relationships built on mutual respect instead of emotional dependency. You begin choosing from strength rather than loneliness. Even the opportunities you encounter shift, because your choices are now guided by clarity, not fear. Honoring your true self also means honoring your limits. Not every fight deserves your presence. Not every conversation needs your explanation. Not every disappointment needs to be fixed. Mastery is knowing what to engage with and what to release. It's knowing when silence is wiser than response. It's recognizing that protecting your peace sometimes means choosing distance over dialogue, absence over arguments, self-respect over approval. And when you walk away from something that no longer aligns with your inner truth, you are not losing. You are clearing space. Space for better things, stronger things, more aligned things. It's like pruning a tree. What you cut away might look like loss, but it is exactly what allows new growth to flourish. The world interprets walking away as abandonment, but those who understand life deeply know it is a form of creation. You are shaping your destiny by removing what weakens it. Mastering your inner world is not about becoming emotionless. It is about becoming emotionally sovereign. You feel everything, but nothing controls you. You experience disappointment without collapsing, rejection without losing your worth, endings without losing your center. You become someone who can stand in silence and still feel whole. Someone who can sit with uncertainty and still feel grounded. Someone who can face loss and still rise with dignity. This inner strength radiates outward. People feel it when you enter a room. They sense it in the way you speak, calm, steady, unapologetically rooted in truth. They see it in the choices you make, in the things you no longer tolerate, in the boundaries you hold without aggression. When you honor your true self, you stop asking, "Who will accept me?" and instead ask, "What aligns with who I truly am?" That shift changes everything. And perhaps the most profound part of this journey is realizing that you do not walk away to punish anyone. You walk away to protect the life you are building. You walk away to preserve the peace you fought to create. You walk away to remain loyal to the person you